we have to look at our businesses from a place of value adds and
Mhm.
value distractions. The ads are the things that create additional value. And here's what's new for people who are maybe the solopreneurs like I used to be. Not being the primary caregiver is a negative thing. It's called key man risk.
I'm Garrett Salpeter, and I believe that the most powerful and transformative way to help people recover from pain and injury, heal from trauma, and reach their highest levels of fitness and performance is to focus on the nervous system. In this podcast, we'll share knowledge from the frontiers of neuroscience and inspirational stories of how applying that knowledge has empowered people from all walks of life to heal, adapt, and grow.
Hello, NeuFit Nation, and welcome back to the Undercurrent podcast. My guests, plural, today are Will Humphreys and Michelle Bambanek, and they have an interesting history together that you'll hear about. Will founded a physical therapy practice, which Michelle originally worked at as a staff physical therapist, rose up through the ranks to become a partner, and they exited that practice in the late 2010s, that decade.
Yeah.
However you describe that decade.
Right.
And now we are also going to be, in addition to talking with them about that history, we're going to be talking about the work that they're doing together, leading their new company, Rockstar, where Will is focused on leading the virtual assistant side of the business, and Michelle focused on the coaching and consulting side of the business. It'll give you a sense of the breadth of what they're up to, and they are really dynamic leaders in the physical therapy field. We initially met them at a couple of events, and our teams just all fell in love with each other, hanging out, and I've gotten to know them more and more over the years, and just can't say enough about them as people and very intelligent business leaders. So I'm really excited to have them on, sharing their insights. Will and Michelle, welcome.
Oh man, thank you so much, Garrett. We are so honored to be here today. We're huge fans of yours in the podcast, and it's such a gift to be able to spend time with you as your company has been changing our industry. So as we work together, it's fun to think how we can help others grow as well.
Yes. Thanks for having us. Such a gracious introduction. And we absolutely love NeuFit, and we're excited to be here with you today.
Awesome. Well, can we, take it from the top? Can we start with the origin story? Let's start with you, Will. I know you have a very interesting story in terms of how you got into physical therapy, started the practice in the first place, and then we'll let Michelle weave in her story joining the practice, and let's start there. Will, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I'll give you the abridged version, audience, so that you don't feel like you're hearing this like detailed long story. I'll give you the highlights. Friday the 13th, 1993. I'm trying to impress a girl that was way prettier than I should have been dating at the time. So I took her mountain climbing without ropes, and I was 50 feet in the air, and she safely got over the top of the mountain, but I slipped and fell 50 feet, 5 stories of a building, broke both arms and legs, was on that mountain, 21 bones. I was on the mountain for hours and hours. Thought I was going to die. Had a very, very strong moment where I was able to find God, literally, in that experience. That's maybe a podcast for another day. But I was alone on that mountain in El Paso, Texas, where it was super hot that day, hit 110 degrees. And so the mountain rescue team came, pulled me off the mountain, saved my life. Again, long story. I started having surgeries. It was almost like a country song. My dad had lost his job a few weeks before that. We didn't even have a dog, but I'm sure he would have died if we had had a dog. And so we ended up moving my living room into like my treatment room, and I was depressed and low and just all the things our patients are during these traumatic experiences. When there was a knock on the door and I knew what it was, I was dreading it. It was the dreaded physical therapist who was going to come to my home and help me start rehabilitating. I had one PT experience in the hospital during those weeks of surgeries, and they were just the worst. Very apathetic, checking a box on their list. I realized now they were probably just overworked and underpaid. But I had this knock on the door, and in came this 5-foot, super old woman who was only 40 years old at the time. I found out later. I'm almost 50 now, so I laugh. But she came in. I thought she was a super old lady, loud, colorful clothes, and just so bright and brilliant that I hated her guts immediately because she was such a ray of sunshine in the dark room of my soul that I was in. And she just didn't take no for an answer, got me to walk. cried when I walked and answered the door for the first time with my bilateral platform walker that took weeks to get to, and helped me get through some serious physical and emotional pain without her even realizing. And that's when I had this realization as a patient that one of the most productive and useful ways to affect the soul of a human being, their spirit, is through their physical intervention. When we move people and help people regain function and reduce pain, we are treating their soul. And I think every provider in this industry gets a sense of that. Maybe they don't verbalize it that clearly, but as a patient, I got it at 17 and immediately decided I was going to become a physical therapist, and was shocked when just years later, I'm in physical therapy school. All my prereqs were PT school based, and I'm raising, they're like, someone in the classroom said, who here wants to own their own practice one day? And I thought all the hands would go up, because why wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. And I raised my hand, and that person said, oh, see, Will's here for the money. I was shamed publicly for wanting to be an entrepreneur. And that began my first painful lesson in realizing our adverse relationship as an industry with money, and how we don't understand how to relate to it in a way to where we can use it as a tool to actually treat and better human beings. And so as a consequence, as we all know, everyone who's listening, we are at the adverse effect of this experience. And so in that university system, there was a brief moment where I was suspended because they thought I was a part of 9/11. That's a whole nother podcast. I wrote a book about it.
Absolutely.
It's a real thing. I was literally arrested by the FBI. But anyway, so we'll talk about that another time. But I was exonerated. That's all you need to know. You don't have any terrorists on the show.
No.
Is it a different Will Humphreys?
Like, for me, it was one of those things where it was like, I will tell you what I learned about that experience, because I was shamed publicly. It was in the newspapers, is that I had people take a stand for me when I didn't know how to. Mm-hmm. So Connie taught me to stand. My closest community, some of them I lost. They just believed the news and would shame me at church. I couldn't go to grocery stores because people would shame me. But I had some people, and they were the kindest, most loving people, take a stand vocally and loudly for me. And that changed me for a long time, to the point where no matter what we talk about today, the thing that we're all in this together for is to move the needle for the industry, because we know what it does for people. So I ended up starting a business. Guess what? I suck at it really bad. I had a business coach tell me, man, you're not naturally good at almost any of this, but you're very coachable and you're trainable, so we can work with you. And that, I will tell you this, that when I was about 2 or 3 years into my first private practice, it was so hard. It was so devastating to me that I remember thinking, this is so much harder than breaking 21 bones in my body. Mm-hmm. Emotionally, it was more damaging, truly, to be an entrepreneur in that space. So I did the thing that I told my wife one day I was going to walk away from all of it. I just said, Heather, I can't do this. This isn't worth it. And she was 100% supportive, but she said this, why don't you try hiring a coach? Why don't you join a business networking group? And so I found Entrepreneurs Organization, a group that Garrett, you're a part of. And everything shifted for me. And the first thing I had to do was clean house. And I had to fire this guy named Scott. And he was a great guy. He wasn't a good fit for the company, but that was like part of my getting the thing cleaned up for the right people. And I remember praying to God, saying, okay, God, I've done the thing you want me to do. Now I expect you. Like, I've never prayed like that before. Mm-hmm. I now expect you to fill the gap. And later that day, I got a call from a recruiter about one young lady called Michelle Bambanek. So I'm going to turn the time. By the way, I can't turn the time over to her without saying first and foremost that the reason I was able to become an entrepreneur was hired initially by the great Nathan Shields of the Private Practice Owners Club. Mm-hmm. He and I were working together, and at one point later we became partners. But at this point I was a solopreneur, and I met Michelle. So I'll pass it over to her.
All right.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Will. It's a tough story to follow, but I'll pick up where you left off. So, I found myself outside of physical therapy school, and immediately, within 6 months, was in a clinical directorship position because of some changes that were happening in the organization that I had become a part of. Fast forward about 4 years of trying to struggle through what I thought was good leadership and kind of just flying by the seat of my pants on knowing how to run and operate a clinic. I found where they, right before a big life event, I was told that I needed to shut the clinic down because they were no longer going to have it open, and that I needed to find a place for my patients to go. And it's interesting because just earlier that week, I had received something from a recruiter, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to save this. I don't know why. I was not necessarily unsatisfied with what I was doing. I was kind of working with a great team and operating from a place of leadership, what I thought was leadership, that I've learned to realize that, of course, we all have growth aspects in that. But in essence, I decided to make that phone call and take this interview. And it was for a clinical directorship position. I live in Gilbert, Arizona, and this happened to be in Coolidge, Arizona. Was advertised as, I give Will a hard time about this, and the recruiter, it was advertised as South Chandler. And if you are in the state of Arizona and know anything about proximity between Gilbert and Coolidge and South Chandler, it's a little bit off the mark.
It's south Chandler.
Cross a little bit of open fields and wild horses, and you might find Coolidge, but it soon became my my journey out there. And I said to myself quietly, I was like, this is going to be a great practice interview, knowing how far away it was. And within the moments of meeting him and being able to see how we were immediately energetically connected, but also without fully discussing vision, I can look back on it and realize that we had the same why, and we had the same desired effect for the community, the small community that Coolidge was. And Coolidge shortly became my home. Shortly after that became my home, that very next night. Or that very night. I think I signed that night. I was like, there is no way I'm not taking this position.
Which was the day or two after that prayer. Like in 3 days after the firing. Like we had to create the vacuum. And this is a lesson I just want to hit is we have to have the courage to create the vacuum in our businesses so it attracts the right people at the right time. Some people call that God or the universe, but at the end of the day, it's measurable.
I mean, I think that, I'm going to double down on the fact that there have been tough decisions that we've had to make within our team. And we've never made those decisions soon enough. Right. And really, quite honestly, it's a testament to really, truly understanding what your why is, who you are, your purpose and your values, and how they operate within you and your team, and realizing that sometimes comfort is just something that we have to work against, and really have to be bold and courageous about taking action around the things that we want. And again, that might be creating space, not knowing what that thing is going to be. And truly, that was what Will was asking for and what happened for me in that moment. So I eventually, without taking it day by day, grew into leadership within that particular clinic. And then we expanded into my oversight over the other clinic at Florence. And then we started building more and more leadership team members. We went through a merger, and then I found myself in a vice president of operation role over 4 clinics. And around that time is when sweat equity and working together and value alignment allowed me the opportunity to become partner in Rising.
Let me say it differently, because that was a very humble way of saying she was a rock star, and we were terrified of the idea of losing her. So she earned her way into equity in our company. So at that point, Nathan and I had merged. We had Affinity Physical Therapy and Pinnacle. It became Rise Rehab. Mm-hmm. And at that time, Michelle stepped in as a partner.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. There's so many good themes there that, creating the vacuum, or, sometimes we hear the expression burning the boats,
right?
Leaning into discomfort, like you said there, Michelle. That's also a fascinating thing just to touch on, Will, that you talked about being shamed for raising your hand and saying that you want to start a business. So that's a whole interesting philosophical discussion there too.
For sure.
I just want to, underscore, highlight what you said, Will, about how when we improve people's movement and the way they inhabit their physical form, it really does positively affect their mind, their spirit, their soul. And it really is a two-way street. I mean, I think about that, like, when I'm having a stressful time, a difficult day, like, when I work out, move my body, I feel better.
Yeah.
And the times
Absolutely.
when I'm in pain and how frustrating that can be, I mean, one of the blessings of that is it gives me sympathy for, our patients, clients, people we work with. And I know many people listening to this have that same story as well. But yeah, I think that it is such a two-way street. Of course, the mind affects the body and vice versa in some very, very significant ways there. So just really wonderful themes already in those intros. So can you talk about, when you talk about this merger into what became Rise Rehab, what made Rise Rehab sellable? It's one thing that, if most businesses out there are not sellable. So I'll just leave it open-ended. What made it an attractive, entity that someone would actually want to pay money to purchase?
Will, you want to
Michelle,
start?
okay. We both said we want to start.
Okay.
So I think that was number one. That was probably reflected in Michelle and I's answer is our culture. We hear this term a lot. What is culture? One of the best definitions I've heard is the way our team members feel on Sunday night before work. That's a great description of culture, but ultimately it's a clarity over the purpose, vision, and values of a company. The purpose being why they exist, the vision of where they're going, and the values for what they stand for and how they make decisions. So that was a big piece of it. There's numerous pieces, and there's actually some really cool documents online that we could share with you, Garrett, that you could put in the notes if you want. But to break it down, it's as simple as saying we have to look at our businesses from a place of value adds and value distractions. So the ads are the things that create additional value. And here's what's new for people who are maybe the solopreneurs like I used to be, is that not being the primary caregiver is a negative thing. It's called key man risk. And so they look for companies that have, of course, profits. The obvious things would be gross and net profits. Like those are obvious. The more gross and net profit you have, the more valuable. But the things that people don't think about, the value adds that are multipliers would be things like culture, and culture shows up like retention. It shows up like a number of things. But then you have these other elements like data. You don't think of data as a value add, but the ability to aggregate, organize, and accurately forecast data is one of those value adds that became incredibly useful when we went to sell. When we sold our practice, we ended up selling our practice for 2 to 3 times what was the national average at the time in 2018, because we had these value adds.
And just to be clear, so when you say 2 to 3 times, I just want to make sure people are not thinking it's a 2 to 3 times multiple. If the average multiple was 3x EBITDA, for example, 2 to 3 times that would be 6 to 9x EBITDA. So you're saying the multiple was larger than what typical practices are getting.
Yes, and quite literally, the multiple we would have gotten was closer to 3, and what we would have gotten for our size, but what we ended up getting was 2 to 3 times that, which was a multiplier of our sales price. And one of the cool things was strong leadership, obviously value add, autonomy, meaning that it's process, not people dependent. Yep. So each of these things could be a deep dive for sure, but there's resources out there that you can look at. But those things started with culture. Michelle, what would you add to that?
I mean, definitely culture is going to be the driving, purpose-driven, value-aligned. It was, and we were unapologetic about people that did not ascribe to that and did not fall within what we were trying to build there. And it wasn't a judgment on those individuals as much as just a non-fit for our organization. And we had a very, very specific drive and target for what we were trying to achieve. And we wanted all people aligned on that in that same direction, rowing in the same direction. So culture, I mean, we could have counted down from 3 and we would have both said culture. And so that, but the data component part of it is significant. The processes is significant, and data and processes, not only in the heads and hands of the owners. That is something that I think we really invested in our team and building leadership team members. We often say that the hallmark of a true leader is those that build other leaders, right? That's our primary job, is to build other leaders. And so we took that very, very seriously. And it started with our ownership and then me coming on as a partner and then really pouring in through coaching, through stats understanding, so that whenever we did go to market, there was a capability of multiple people through the organization. I dare say everyone at some level being able to understand their contribution and how to improve it for the better.
Yeah, I love that. And to triple hit down on processes, you know, that was an amazing realization after we closed, because, you know, we built playbooks for every position, Garrett, from a place of like, we just want things to get easier. Yeah. And you're told, like, if you go to anything business, or like, make sure you write up your processes. We started getting really passionate about that. And when we created those, and then people would come in with questions, the number one response is, well, what does the playbook say? Mm-hmm. That shift was, it's ironic. The thing that makes owning a business easier and more automated to the point where you wouldn't want to sell it is the very thing that adds those dramatic points for value. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the way out is the same. If your plan is to exit your business, or if your plan is to create a legacy, which is the only two real options we have, exit or legacy, then we're in a position where we do the same things. You automate, you educate, you build these leadership teams, you do all the things. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That is a great. Go ahead, Michelle.
No, I was just going to say the obstacle truly is the way, though. Those things were not easily done, right? You know, Will and I used to meet before we had like a office outside of our clinic in a place called Paradise Bakery. And we had a strategic plan named Two Tickets to Paradise. Two Tickets to Paradise, because we were living anything but, right? Like, and so we needed a save to how we were operating, and something that wasn't on, you know, the rock, paper, scissors of who needs to go handle the fire between Will and I on a day-to-day basis. So we needed other people to be brought up into an ownership, an understanding, but also an empowerment of being somebody and a part of something bigger than themselves. And so, you know, it was a lot of work, and it's those things that you think you put the period at the end of the process and the hat write up, or, you know, the playbook, it's recreating itself behind you as things start to become efficient and nuanced.
And technology makes it easier now. Last thing I'll say on this is there's a software called Trainual. I get nothing for saying this and promoting them, but I don't run a business now without that software, because using AI, and there's people that you can hire to actually like interview you and then go build out your processes. Mm-hmm. I will be happy to recommend them. I get nothing for recommending them other than you being successful, the listener. So if you're listening to this going like, oh, I need to develop that, but who has time? Well, it sounds like an infomercial that I get nothing from, but you should go to the show notes. And by the way, share the episode with your friends, because this is one of those rising tides that helps everything. Absolutely. So yeah, there's the, you know, trainual.com. And then there's a company that you can hire that I highly recommend. I've recommended them to non-PT companies, and they build out these amazing systems and processes for you just by interviewing you and using AI. It's crazy.
Yep. It's great.
Awesome. That company is Trainual, or there's a separate one also?
So trainual.com is the software.
Right.
The other company is a solopreneur. Her name is Brandy, and she has been partnered with, she's like Trainual certified, and she's worked very directly in that space. So we contracted her out directly. And I would just say, having interviewed multiple people for these types of positions, she's incredibly valuable.
She's phenomenal. Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. So we planted a couple seeds here. You will talk about interviewing people for positions, gets into recruiting and some of the virtual assistant work. Michelle, what you mentioned there, well, what both of you mentioned in terms of culture, data, leadership processes, that's going to plant seeds for some of the topics we'll talk about in Rockstar Consulting and the coaching consulting services that you're offering now. So we've got a good framework or a good foundation to build upon as we go here. Before we go to that, you know, you talked about, you made the decision to go to market, start selling your practice. So what was that? Was that the goal all along, or was it, hey, this is kind of time, or what inspired you to make that decision and start selling? And then can you tell us what that was like? Do you hire a banker?
I love that, because motivation matters. I will tell you that the short answer is it's Michelle's fault. The long answer, I'll tell you in a second, but essentially, there was a toll that was taken in my world to get to the business to that roughly $4 to $5 million point. We had 4 to 5 locations, 50 employees. And so there was a toll. There was an actual toll that was like there. And that broken kid and that college student that was shamed for the entrepreneurship never wanted to have like that be the vision, was just to keep scaling that one practice. It was always, and Michelle and the team knew this before we even thought about exiting.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, yeah, I'm building this as a platform for me to rocket ship back to the industry and see if I can shift things in a palpable way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was tired. And then Michelle comes in with her leadership team. She's like, we're going to be the largest in the nation. And everyone's like, hooray. The problem with hiring A players is that they don't have any limits. And that's a good thing. It's a good problem to have. But I just remember her saying that at one meeting and sitting there going like, no way. Like I knew what I did. I knew enough about what I didn't know about scaling. And what's ironic is many of our friends who were at that stage at that time are now at their 50th, 60th, 70th location. They quite, and not to say anything, but we would have been there with my team. There was no way they wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to go back to the industry. And there was an opportunity that arose to create the first ever merger exit, like where it was seller initiated. This is a very common practice outside of PT. We still can't find proof of it having been done before, but essentially 5 owners in Arizona got together and said, what if we came together, merged and exited and controlled that process, not the other way around? Mm-hmm. And that was part of the reason we got the multiple. But I would say that in that case, we weren't even the second biggest, but we got paid more money than anyone else because of those things we mentioned earlier. But that's what motivated it on my end. Michelle, anything you would add to that story?
No, I could still visualize the map of the United States, and I drew suns all over it. And he was like, yeah, I don't have that.
Not in me.
Yeah. So no, I think you covered it pretty well, but
yeah, that was a motivation. And so when we merged, the reason the merger exit was such a great dual solution is because we looked at it initially like this was the way to take the Rise way of doing things and expand it. It was kind of like those strategic partnerships that collapse time. Mm-hmm. So instead of us opening a couple of de novos, a couple every year or two, we were going to be able to partner and merge and spread the Rise way into 26 locations overnight.
That's right.
And I stayed on for a period of time as the VP of recruiting and marketing. Mm-hmm. And Michelle obviously went to a completely high level ops role, which was in itself incredibly useful and educational. But the idea was that she would stay in it, and I was going to, I told the buyers, I'm like, after a year, I'm out. I've got to work on helping the industry.
Yeah.
So,
and then go ahead, Garrett.
How did you find those other 4 owners to partner with? Or was Nathan one of them? You and Nathan collectively, the two of you?
Nathan and I were already partnered. He had started a secondary company in Alaska called Rise Diagnostics that we just recently sold.
Right.
So he was in Alaska from 2016 on. And so this all started early year 2017, mid-year 2017. And it started with just this is one of the biggest lessons I always tell people. I'm cutting to the end here, but like one of the most important takeaways of all time in business is that your network is your net worth. And we hear that like a number of really good ideas and we go, yeah, that makes sense. And we move on. Let me say it again. Network is your net worth, full stop. Tattoo it on your back. Like that kind of, and then the more successful I become, the more successful people I pay to teach me what I don't know. It all comes back to who you know, like literally. So these events we go to, networking, spending time to be on or listen to podcasts, this is incredibly valuable. And these were people that I had built a network with and within the state of Arizona. And so literally it all started with this guy, Jared, who had 5 locations. And he called me when he was in his underwear is the truth of it. Later, I found out it wasn't at the time. It would have grossed me out. But he's like, "Hey, listen, Will, because he had an MBA. He's like, I don't know why no one's doing these like, seller initiated mergers, roll ups." And I was just like, "Yeah, I don't know." He's like, "What if we did it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm happy to." It's always yes for me until it's no. Mm-hmm. I was like, "Sure, as long as it doesn't disrupt too much of my routine." But then I called my friend Sean Miller, who owned Connect Physical Therapy. And then he called his friend Matt Figueroa. And pretty soon, at one point, there was like 7 of us, and then 2 of them backed out, and there was 5 of us. But what we were shocked to find out is that we had over 20 private equity groups interested in the deal. And at a certain point, a handful of them were fighting over it. This isn't going to happen anymore. That doesn't happen anymore. Right. But yeah, at the time, that's what happened. And then we sold.
So you put together this group, you came together as a group, and then did you have to hire like an investment banker or a business broker or someone to reach out to private equity firms on your behalf, or did you DIY that? Just
We DIY'd it through Jared because he had an MBA, and we just thought he'll handle it,
okay,
and he did.
Awesome. All right, and that group is still going on today.
Yep.
Michelle, tell them about that group.
Yeah. So after our exit, what we were at 26 initially.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as he mentioned, he was in marketing, I was in operations. And then after a couple years within that organization, I made my exit from that organization to go into what we're doing together now. But that company, I can't tell you exactly the number, but it has scaled and scaled and scaled to 200.
It's in the hundreds. It's in the hundreds of locations.
Hundreds of locations now. So it really did create a catalyst for something worldwide that it's going across the nation in terms of its reach and its ability to come together for betterment of our communities and supporting physical therapist assistants. And so we're really excited to continue to hear about all the good things that company is doing. And
yeah, I have to do a shout out, Michelle, if you're okay if I jump in. It's now, so the brand has evolved over time. Now it's Doctors of Physical Therapy, led by an incredible CEO who's a PT, and it's still majority PT owned.
Thank you so much for listening to the Undercurrent podcast. If you're interested in learning more about how NeuFit and the Newbie can impact your life, please visit our website at www.new.fit, that's NEU.fit, so you can learn more about how it might integrate into your professional practice, how you can use it as a patient, and you can also connect with our team there.
That is quite a legacy there, for sure, to see that continue to grow. And it's also a good time to segue into now what you're doing with the Rockstar company. So let's talk first about more of your work, Michelle, on the coaching and consulting side, since we spent a lot of time on culture, data, leadership processes, et cetera. So can you talk about where you see some of the biggest challenges in effectively leading and operating a PT practice, and of course then by extension the types of services that you focus on and are most excited to offer?
Yeah. So I think some of the major challenges that we still continue to see within our industry is this concept that Will has spoken about or touched on at the very beginning of these individuals who are the entrepreneurs in the organization, and they continue to be the primary movers of most of the activities within that organization. They are in charge. They're the chief operators. They are the primary holders of all key relationships and communications. They hire, they fire, they market, they treat too. So it's that key man like liability that we see. And that becomes a stuck in the fact that if they are unable to achieve something, that just is where the company can stagnate. Right. So if you don't have an individual or a team, an individual who has a team behind them in which to move forward, there is going to be complacency. There's going to be all the things that I can only handle on a day-to-day basis. And that's where I think our cap in our limitation and our ability to scale. And that's where we also then feel stuck. So my primary approach is to work with practice owners and key leaders in creating resilient teams, as well as efficiencies in operations, so that there is an opportunity for them to scale optimally. So that is going through, exercises around purpose and values so that we're actually speaking the same language. But then also going through the hiring and process with, people like Will and teams that know how to do that well, so that we can make sure that the appropriate teams are being built, and then being able to empower them with statistical data, creating areas where they have a voice within the organization so that they can be a part of something bigger than themselves. So empowering them from a ground up kind of perspective.
I love that. So what does that look like in terms of implementation and the interactions with clients of yours? You know, is it, I assume you have an initial call, do a little bit of fact finding, and then is it like, hey, what are your values spelled out? What's going, and kind of take a survey of what's going on, and then identify the biggest constraint or area to focus on, and then so just generally, I want to ask that, and I also want to ask how you. Sorry, there's like a bunch of questions rolled into one.
That's okay.
But then how you go through the process of working through that, key man liability, as you said, where the owner is kind of the bottleneck, in terms of, like I've done processes, for example, of literally doing a time study with myself, writing down what I'm doing in 15-minute increments, and then analyzing that over a 2-week period to see what is a good use of, my time or talents, and then what isn't, and what I should hand off and stuff like that. So I'm just kind of, generally, interested in diving into the mechanics of how you do this and how you actually identify the problems and help people solve them.
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. And it is multifactorial. So I'll go into a few different ways of how we do it, but it does begin with a discovery call. So oftentimes I'll get on with a leadership team or an owner if it's a single entrepreneur, and we'll go through a conversation and really highlighting areas that they are winning, but then also areas that they're finding themselves most stuck. And in that discovery process, I will be able to pull out some of the areas that I think need the greatest amount of attention. You mentioned purpose and values, and oftentimes if that's not established, we'll go through a full program around how to establish your purpose and values so that we can make sure that we're working with a baseline groundwork foundation of good material in which to build an organization, because it's only going to be as strong as our why behind it. Right. And so that's the first place that I will look at is making sure that that's in place. And then again, as you mentioned, highlighting areas of opportunity, whether that's in, hey, I don't even know what the scoreboard's saying because we're not even looking at statistics. So I really don't know how I'm winning or if I'm losing. And, or, hey, do we have a consistent way of being able to communicate with each other? What is that rhythm of communication? What does bringing a team member on look like? Are they starting with a full schedule day one without an introduction into even just who we are? So it depends specifically on what I find during that discovery call on the direction that I go with that particular team. And there's a multitude of ways that which we can work with them. That's working with the owner and making sure mindset and all of that is there to create then an opportunity for a leader to come in and catch that fire and be able to work with that owner and meld together, not just owner vision, but bringing that leader that has self-initiative and a desire to improve the operations of something that means something to them. So we'll build the leadership team from that perspective with specific coaching programs that we offer that I'd be happy to go into with anybody who's interested. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to say where Michelle, I think, really shines, the solopreneur thing is super easy, but where I feel like she makes the biggest impact is in the multi-locational businesses where the directors become a bottleneck because she coaches them in a group sense. And that's pretty awesome because that's what she did for us at Rise. She was the clinic director whisperer. And then she expanded that to dozens of locations at Empower is what the new name was for a while. Mm-hmm. And so she's, for her, that's one of the coolest things that even at, I think the real sweet spot for what she does is in that space where the owner has multiple locations, but they're also kind of like highly involved with their directors at a level that they don't have directors that totally think like owners yet.
Right.
And so she's that shift. And I kid you not, since we've been doing this together now, Garrett, for years, and this is self-serving because I will say I financially benefit if you guys buy, but but it doesn't make it less true, is that what I've seen is that we've had literally 0 scores below a 10 out of 10 on the NPS ever. Like, as a matter of fact, when we layer different services together, many people often report this as the single greatest thing because it's a done for you where she meets with the directors on your behalf, and then it makes them more independent and all these things. So it's a really special thing when that leadership team steps up and starts owning their space. It's cool to watch.
Yeah. And owning your space is something that really is the key spot around it. Thank you for that, Will. I really do appreciate that. And I do find that there's value in bringing up those leaders, but that it starts with that self-awareness. The self-aware leader is going to be the most powerful leader. And so then we, after that, highlight the areas where they're feeling like stressed out. You mentioned your time, right? Is there anything that I'm doing within my day that can be done by somebody that is, very directly at a lower price point than myself, or at a lower level of need than myself as a CEO? And then you delegate that, and you delegate that appropriately so that you're offloading those things so that you have the ability to move into a greater sphere of influence, essentially. So, and it's highlighting those things that drain us of energy as well as spark us with joy and energy. And that's where some of our work with 6 Types of Working Genius, and just truly understanding ourselves and that of our team, so we can pull the levers on strength and optimization where necessary and offload the things that really just drain us. And so there's different tools that we can use and leverage within an organization to optimize.
I'm glad you mentioned the 6 Working Geniuses. That's on my list because we've talked about that separately, and you're the one who introduced me to that concept, and it's been super valuable. I want to throw a question back to Will.
Yeah.
This is my 60 minute style interview moment where I want to ask you, when you describe this scenario where Michelle comes in and says we're taking this thing national, and you're like, pump the brakes.
Yeah.
Some of that, obviously was your desire to give back to the physical therapy community in a different way.
Sure.
Do you think that if you had some of these, new frameworks, techniques, and strategies, and felt less pressure on yourself as the business grew, that you would have continued to grow that practice, or would you have made the same decision?
Same decision, 100%, because it was less fear of the unknown. I got kind of used to that piece. I think I let out a little bit too dramatically with like the toll that it takes. I think I was mostly like, it was true. And I think I was mostly trying to connect to the audience, but it was so off vision for me. It was so like, it was, again, I was working hard towards like what I knew that, what I don't know if Michelle knew at the time when she said that, was that I had been spending years networking with companies in entrepreneurs organization that were hitting the 10, 20, 50, $100 million level. And so, books like Scaling Up by Vern Harnish that talk about these valleys of death before the plateaus of growth, and they're predictable. They actually have graphs online that you can see that you hit one at 1 million, 5 million, 10, then 20, then 50. Like there's these plateaus, and there was no world where I was going to not be sucked in. Even if I have the tools, they need all hands on deck. And so that wouldn't have changed it. It would have reduced maybe some of the initial like kickback of like, ouch, but it wouldn't have changed it for me.
Okay. So
if I add a little bit in here to Garrett to just kind of complement what Will said. So in that moment, sometimes, when you go through a merger, no matter how successful it is, there is an essence of you that's like, oh, we kind of like our team is no longer together, right? In the way that it originally was, and what would have been, or what are the opportunities that could have existed, which is a very valid question, right? But now, like looking back at it, I wouldn't change anything, because the individuals that were within Rise, I could probably get emotional around this, have splintered off to create lights and sunshine in all of the new industries and all the new companies that they have started or have become a part of. So it's interesting to realize that maybe we were the farm league, of all this greatness that is supposed to actually go out and disseminate and like sprinkle across the world, in different industries, new industries within our industry. We have people that have started businesses, clinics. We have individuals that are within, counseling, some people that are in, different organizations that are not even associated with physical therapy that have just created such influence. And that's a legacy that I'm proud of. And I know that Will is too.
Ironically, Garrett, in retrospect, it would have been easier not to sell. It would have been
Totally.
easier to get with Michelle and scale. That was scary at the time. And I think to kind of round out your question, that with those tools, it would have retrospectively been way easier than reinventing myself.
Totally.
Because what I didn't realize is you sure come into a lot of money when you exit, but when you're 42 years old,
Yeah.
you've got a lot of life left and you can burn through that money pretty quick
Sure.
just by being a parent of 4 boys. So as we were in this position of, cash flow is life is a common phrase that you'll hear. So when you cut off that cash flow, no matter, unless you're at that retirement stage and you're not planning on 40 more years of life, it's like, it was one of those things where we had to reinvent, but I wanted that reinvention and it was invigorating, but it was way tougher in my opinion than it would have been just to keep staying in that line. Cause I've had friends go down that course and they have challenges for sure, but there's a level of comfort that I know, a lifestyle that they maintain during that process.
Yeah. And knowing what we know now, it absolutely would have been easier. But now we have the unique ability and capability of helping others do what we did and recreate that same atmosphere and do that within their own vision, their own purpose, and their values. And I mean, that's what I think that Will and I love doing is realizing that you don't have to step in the same puddle that I did multiple times. Like, we're here to turn decades into days for you in like the tools that we learned. So that's a joy I have.
I love that. And it's funny to hear you talk about all of the people that were on your team at Rise and the things they've gone off to do. It reminds me of the PayPal Mafia, which
totally.
If you're listening to this, you may know, the Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Reid Hoffman, who started LinkedIn, the guy who was the co-founder of YouTube.
Totally.
There was like these people who were part of PayPal. When they exited, they went off and did all these amazing things. Elon, of course, put his money into Tesla and SpaceX. There's a list of 10 or more executives there that have gone on to do these just amazing things. So it's the
Rise Mafia. Here we are.
The Rise Mafia. Yeah, it was like, I loved what Michelle said that too, because I never doubted that process. I know a lot of our team members were like, why did you do this to us? And now, I didn't say it like that, but it was like, why?
Kind of.
Yeah, kind of. And then, like you said, now we've all come full circle and watching them all become entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs in the way that they have. It's like, oh, it was meant to be in the end.
That's very cool. So while we're still on this topic of coaching and consulting, Michelle, can you educate? I've talked a little bit on one previous episode. I did an episode on the neuroscience of leadership, and I did a little bit at the 6 types of working genius, but not in depth. No more than really a passing comment. This has been a profound framework for me. It's been a lot more meaningful. People use DISC or Colby score or these different like personality attribute type testing things. And having experienced those and found value in them, I can say that this has been the most useful for me. And that's probably something about me and So I'm not to necessarily discount those, but I've just found it so useful, and I'm grateful to you for introducing it to us. And can you please describe that framework to our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the question, and be careful with this question because I could talk all day on this one. But
the 6-hour podcast.
6-hour podcast on the 6 types of working genius because of its influence in not only the people that I get to work with, but also for me personally. And so I think what speaks to me most about this is this understanding that we are, and Will has said this a number of times, what we want is our family to become a team and our team to become a family, in a sense that we want to know and understand each other so that we can support each other as we go through the way we go about our work. And so this concept is unlike the DISC and many of those other assessments in that it's 80% driven towards how we operate in work and 20% personality. And so there's 40 some odd questions that you will go through, and it really puts you into a position of understanding that within each of us, well, let me back up. There's 6 phases of work, okay? And 2 of them are going to be our geniuses. 2 of them are going to be our competencies, and 2 of them are going to be our frustrations. Our geniuses are the ones that give us joy and energy, that give us a lot of excitement. If we're doing this all day long, it actually doesn't feel like work. Okay. And then the competencies are ones that we're probably pretty good at. These that don't necessarily drive us with a bunch of energy, nor do they actually produce or draw energy from us. And then our frustrations are the ones that we end up finding ourselves procrastinating on, making excuses about not getting them completed. These are the ones that drain us of all of our energy, our soul. And they're just like, I'd rather never do these again. Right. So the steps of the work is the idea of it beginning with a question, one that goes out into the atmosphere, right? It starts with wonder, the generation of an idea, a concept of an idea. Just curiosity is where you can think about this wonder. I wonder if this is the right way to do this. I wonder why that plane flies. You get the concept. So the next one is invention. This is when, hey, you know what? This is a process that needs tweaking. Here are some ideas. These are individuals that love giving ideas. A whiteboard that's empty is their best friend. Okay. Then after that phase of work goes into discernment, which is the ability to tease out the good option from the maybe not so good option and refine it to make sure that, hey, this is a good thing that we need to put some attention on. After that comes, okay, we've solidified this idea, this thought, this idea, and we've teased it out. We need to get people excited about it. So then comes galvanizing. So where you get the team excited about the initiative, you communicate the importance of it, and everybody's getting the message that multiple owners, leaders have already ruminated on. But you've got to make sure that your team knows that message. Then it goes into what we call enablement, which is creating policies, procedures, the systems and the tools that will make those that actually ultimately carry out the work successful in it. And now that's the tenacity individuals. These individuals love getting things accomplished, a check mark at the end of it, and with high marks. And those are all the overview of the phases of work. Now, each of us have to participate in them at some phase, always, but some of them are going to be more fulfilling to us, to our souls, a bit more than others. And knowing them will help us lean into those and also provide support to those that are maybe more suited for that, and it complements the way that we're able to go throughout our day. So in the days of Rise, and also just now, there was always this concept between Will and I. We're like, why is it so easy? It's so easy to work together. It's just like magic. And how can we like create this? And knowing this model, it's because we alternate on many of these concepts. So where he comes in with the capability of inventing. So wonder, are you a competent? I'm competency in wonder, and so is Will. So we can kind of like, hey, look at the outside world and systems, processes, and maybe generate like, hey, something's off here. We need to figure something out. And Will can generate a ton of ideas. Okay. So it goes from wonder to invention. I'm a discerner genius. So I love to refine what he's giving to me. And then he goes to galvanizing, rallying the troops, Will, right? Like he loves to get people excited about opportunities that exist. And so he's getting people jazzed about what we're about to embark on. Then I'm an enabler. I come right after that and say, okay, I'm excited too. Here's how we're going to accomplish that. And I get the tools and everything ready for the actual action to take place. And then tenacity gets kicked over to those individuals that have capability of following processes, procedures, and going through all of these things with great detail and success in making sure that they're accomplishing things. That's where Will and I both wash our hands. We're both frustrated in that area. But without going too much into the detail, because like I said, I could go on forever. I'll pause here for Will to say anything, or if you have any other questions around just the concept of the model in general. But the way that we work together is delineated through this model.
The quick thing I would just add is that I loved it because it takes all the like non-work stuff out of it. Mm-hmm. Like it's just really quick and easy. There's no like identification in a sense you do with a disc or something. It's like, well, I guess it's not a label that you carry with you. Mm-hmm. here's how work gets done. This is what you love. And for me, having used this now to start multiple companies that are, 7 figures, it has dramatically reduced the drain of not knowing why some things work and some things don't. It's so predictable and black and white. You just go, oh, this is why those two will work well together. That person is a fit for that role when their geniuses match up with certain responsibilities. And it's so simple. My gosh.
Yeah.
Again, we get nothing out of saying it. It's just, we couldn't be more excited about this thing.
Yeah. It's a simple concept. It's not easy to execute if you don't know this information, right? And it's still not always easy to make sure that we're doing it appropriately. There's a lot of nuances that I don't have the time to go into right now, but happy to discuss with anybody who might be interested in that, because it truly is a game shift. And I will make one last comment about this, and it's in the fact that it's determined through this particular model that burnout doesn't tend to be the concept of burnout is not something that they consider a thing if we're working more so in our geniuses. The concept of burnout tends to be associated with too much work and our frustrations and our competencies. So knowing this about our team and creating a balance between those can create an opportunity where we may not be experiencing this buzzword that gets thrown around. And there's a real thing for a lot of people of feeling overworked, right? It's not a concept of too much work as much as too much work outside of your genius.
I love what you said there, Michelle. And it's funny, the integrator in our business, he and I have the same sort of alternating thing, and it helps on why we work so well together. So there's a lot there. It could be a whole other podcast episode. Will, let's transition and talk a bit about the other big branch of the Rockstar tree here, which is recruiting virtual assistants, et cetera. So can you tell us how you're helping practices in that area of the company?
Yeah, I never thought I was going to be doing this. This has been, for me, the greatest way I've been able to impact the industry. One of the first companies I started when I went and started redefining myself was a billing company. Mm-hmm. And that billing company grew and did very well. And I learned that recruiting was pretty challenging, even more so for medical billers than it was for PTs, believe it or not. And so I started hiring through a company overseas. First person I hired cried because they were so excited for the job. And then the next six resumes were not good fits. And recruiting's my specialty. I think if that's my genius, it's going to be in recruiting. Mm-hmm. So I decided to create my own agency for myself, for the billing company. And then the billing company has since then moved on. It still exists, and I'm still owner in it passively. The operator runs it. It's very concierge, so I don't like to confuse the audience, but it was the gateway to the virtual assistants. Mm-hmm. And I had people I was helping with Michelle coaching. I was doing a lot of like exit planning coaching. Mm-hmm. And people were like, hey man, could you give me a chance to hire one of your VAs? And I said, no. I've got multiple companies, and that's not the vision. The vision is for Will to be a coach and to be the star of a show and all my ego and all these things. And then they begged, literally, I couldn't get rid of them. So I piloted a program 2 years ago, and they came back after a month and said, that was better than any coaching you've ever given me, which hurt a little. That was so much better. And by the way, these people are they bleed my culture and all these things. And I realized I was looking too hard to what I can do. This was the thing I love doing. Mm-hmm. And so since that time frame, July 10th, 2023, we have hired over 250 virtual assistants to help over 160 medical practices across the country. And we are growing unbelievably rapidly. And I think to me, the number that I care about the most is that our churn, meaning the people who hire us and then, fire us, is less than 2%. Mm-hmm. 98% plus of people that hire us stick with us. And that's our number one growth vehicle, is that we know how to find the best people to do anything non-clinical, from answering the phones to being a personal assistant to social media marketing to medical billing, insurance verification. We do everything. And so I have taken all of my playbooks that Michelle and I had, and we use that to help our teams find the best people. And so we don't do the training for them, but they require very little. And so our number one growth vehicle is people who are like, I might need one, and then they hire their seventh. That's right. And so it has been the coolest thing, because I go to the Philippines with my team. I coach my Filipino team members, everything. Our purpose on that side of Rockstar is to build and strengthen families across the globe. So these people in the Philippines, this is life-changing money. They cry, they show up with incredible expertise, and they make the Americans work harder.
Mhm.
And then the PT, OT, SLP member, or any medical practice right now, we work with orthopedic surgeons, any kind of medical specialty, dental. And so we have now these medical teams that have families the way that we had at Rise.
Mhm.
So it's so beautiful because what we say is that Rockstar is a freedom engine where Michelle does the educate and I do the delegate. So I'm out there to find the who's for you to delegate. And it's put me behind the scenes a little bit to where now it's these wonderful VAs that are front and center and they are the stars of the show. And it makes me so happy to see this growth and to see this impact. We were a silver sponsor at PPS and I don't know, man, it's just like a dream come true. This was what I always wanted. I wanted to be involved in something that actually moved the needle for my friends.
Mhm.
And why? Because my friends are Connie Clemens, the same therapist that treated me.
That's
If I can help them have more profits and time, they're going to live a better life, but they're going to reinvest that energy and money into providing better care for those 17-year-old idiots that go climbing on a Friday the 13th. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's the coolest thing ever. And so it's just to be in the stage. Honestly, I pinch myself every morning and I say this every morning, Garrett, this is an exaggeration. I pray and I thank God for Rockstar.
Mhm.
That's an amazing full circle moment. And I also love the way that you're connecting the dots here between what we talked about with the key man risk and the owner being the bottleneck and being able to offload these non-clinical skills. So you're Michelle in the consulting is identifying the problem, and of course you're helping provide the solution there.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure that is not lost on anybody, just calling it out. And it's a good way to wrap up that portion of it. So as we wind down here, what's the best way for people listening to find you? Tell us website, social media handles, etc.
Yeah. So you can reach me at my email, Michelle at unlockhba.com. I am on LinkedIn, and we can certainly put some additional information in the show notes on how to reach me cell phone wise.
Love that. And if you want to explore the space of a virtual assistant, most people, they're just reaching out to learn about it. There is a complete risk-free way for you to even see if it's a fit for you. We will not move forward with you if it's not a fit.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't know it's a fit because they've never done it before. So feel free to reach out to virtualrockstar.com. On that website at the bottom, there's a little form that you fill out. You get on a discovery call, no pressure. We are just educating people at this point to see what it's like for them, either now or down the road.
Amazing. And final question for each of you. If you could share one message by shouting it from the rooftop or shouting it from a mountaintop for everyone to hear, or tall enough rooftop, or putting it on a billboard for everyone to see, each of you, what would your message be?
Ooh, well, go ahead.
Yeah, it's this, is that the day that your company functions without you is the day that you actually impact more people's lives.
There you go.
The day that you are not stressed out and carrying all on your shoulders is the day that everything changes. And I know everyone here wants that if they're struggling with that on some degree, but just to be patient in the process. Literally, if I can do it, anyone can do it. So just never give up. It's like Elon Musk calls it chewing glass. Yeah, it sucks, but the people who don't get stuck, who achieve that level and that value, the only difference between them is they don't give up. It has nothing to do with anything else. So just keep going, guys. What you're doing matters.
Yeah. And mine would have to just be trusting and investing in yourself and your team, because your team can certainly not outrun unclear leadership. And so I think that is something that I wish I learned earlier, and something that I'm on a mission to make sure we spread across our industry. Yeah.
Awesome. Common themes in both of your messages, which is not surprising given your alignment on values and purpose here. So that was great. I really appreciate Will and Michelle, both of you, coming on here to the show, sharing your wisdom with NeuFit Nation. And to you tuning in and listening to this, thank you for being a part of NeuFit Nation. We will see you on the next episode. Goodbye for now.
Thank you, Garrett. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett.
Bye, everybody.